Alrighty guys, and welcome back. We are 3 weeks out and oh my gosh, I have so much work to do. So this past week was kind of excellent, but then also terrible at the same time. And I guess what I mean by that is I'm just gonna show you. This happened on Sunday. No! Oh my goodness. I was going so great and then my brain fell out and I just forgot that I was in prep, as you do. So this weekend has been quite an interesting weekend trying to play a little bit of catch up. So I want to go all over my data with you, talk about my programs, perhaps talk and discuss a little bit about the workouts that I've been doing and just how things are really just going. So let's take it over to my coaching check-in sheets. And guys, remember, if you want to get access to these sheets, you can. I have been using these sheets for several years now, and each year they take on a new, feature or functionality. But let's go through it, I guess, start to finish. Let's look at the left-hand side of the page first. So you can see here this column I that I'm highlighting on the screen for you says weight. So you can see here that I'm looking at the wrong week. Let me just scroll down a second. It says weight. So my average weekly weight this past week was 130.4. I only got 3 weigh-ins, and that is just an effect of me getting out of bed in the morning and just being rushed, absolutely go, that I haven't had an opportunity to hop on the scale. And then by the time I've actually gotten back, I'm like, well, I've already eaten this or I had that shake. It's just going to end up throwing my true weight, you know what I mean? So ideally you want to try and weigh in first thing in the morning, before food and fluid, to make sure that you're looking at a consistent, data point. When you start introducing later day weigh-ins, and especially after you've eaten multiple different meals, it can become a little problematic. And here's why. If I decided to, drink a bunch of water or my soda in this case in the morning, that's gonna, register on the scale as, my body weight. And if I didn't do that the previous day, or I had different types of fluids, or foods coming in on previous days, it's not necessarily a true reflection of my weight. So ultimately, the more meals you start to introduce, the greater the measurement error is going to be, and then the less likely you're looking at accurate data. So 130.4 is about the best that I could do this week. And I will say, my weight last week was 130.3 and I had my cycle. So I haven't really made any progress this past week and I am a little bit frustrated. Again, I was doing great up until about, Saturday, and then my brain fell out. So we'll talk a little bit more about that today. So where I am, I guess, this week in relation to where I should be, if we go back over and have a look at my spreadsheet, I'm going to blow this up so it's nice and big so you can see it on the screen. So we'd be reviewing or reflecting on the week of the 31st. So here's that weekly weight average that I just mentioned. I was supposed to be coming in at 130.6, so I'm technically on track. But again, when I set up this initial protocol, I wasn't entirely sure where I was going to be landing in terms of my body weight, because this is the first time where, again, I've been really pushing like certain muscle groups, trying to atrophy other certain groups. So, my weight has kind of been moving around. It's like a bit of a moving target because there's been such a dramatic shift in how I look. So I wasn't too sure. And I truly think that I do think I'll be around this 127 to 128 mark on stage. So with these calculations, and again, I started back in the end of January and I was shooting for a 0.4% of my body weight per week. So extremely conservative. I didn't have a whole lot I had to make changes to, just about, 9 pounds, slightly under, something to that effect. So that would have me coming in on the weekend, or the week I start my peak, at 128.9, which I think might still be a little heavy. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I still do have peak week to make some adjustments if I need to. So if I need to bring my weight down a little bit more, get a last little bit of body fat off, I can technically take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of peak week, and continue to be in a deficit, and then bring myself in for those final few days. That shouldn't be an issue, but it's just frustrating. Not necessarily having a really good idea of like where I was going to be because I have had to make so many changes to my physique over the last couple of years. So anyway, according to this, I'd be perfectly on track, although I'm just a little bit disappointed with how I actually went this past week because I was trying to get myself ahead. So let's pop back over and have a look at that data sheet. So scrolling across the page, you can see here all of my tracked data. I haven't put my fiber in. I actually ran out of time this morning doing that, but I can tell you it was about 19 grams, so it's a little bit on the lower side this week. But from a compliance standpoint, I put my head down. I was 16% over. And that was only an account of these final 2 days of the week. So anyhow, let's talk about the good stuff before we go to the less optimal nutrition. My average protein up until Friday came in at 121. So that's actually perfect. I'm right kind of where I want to be in terms of my protein. I used to be substantially higher in dietary protein. Part of that was just food choice habits and, what I used to prepare. And I think over the years, despite, a high protein diet knowingly being quite good for us in terms of the ability to build muscle and retain muscle, it was also really skewing my relationship with food. It also prevented me from, feeling comfortable eating more carbs or more fats, which we know also have a very important role to play in terms of our performance and just day-to-day health. So, and also my relationship with food, more importantly. So I've actually scaled that right back down. I kind of sit right in the middle of my recommended protein reference range right now. I've got a little bit of flexibility to go down if I wanted to, but I could also take it up if I felt the need. So I don't mind where it falls on the scale as long as it's in that reference range. I am more than happy with that. So this week, in terms of protein, I was very happy until Sunday. 45. Oh my God. I don't know that I've had a day like that in a while, but we'll get to that. In terms of my average carbohydrates up until Friday, 115, which would have been great. If we go over and have a look at what my actual target was, I was shooting for, let me scroll down to the right week. Here we go. I was shooting for 100. And 30 grams. Actually, I'm looking at the wrong week. 108 and 39 grams of dietary fat. So that's that data there. So I would have been on track for that. And then my dietary fat came in on average at 40. So it was a really good week. I was so happy. It was so organized. I had all my meals prepped and planned. And then, the weekend rolls around. And I am certain that there's somebody sitting here watching this video today going, oh, this happens to me every single week. Why can't I just get past this? And I just want to start out by saying, congratulations, you're a human. Just like me, also human. We tend to give in to our inner desires at times. And this past weekend, obviously, this definitely got the better of me. I was laying in bed, I guess on Sunday morning, and I was like, I am so hungry. So I'm like there looking on Instacart thinking that I'm just going to order, I don't know, something that's breakfast like perhaps. And I was like, oh, I haven't had Crumbl for a while. And then I started looking at all of their menu. Oh my God. And you guys know me, I love carrot cake. If I was going to have a birthday cake, I wouldn't be getting like a regular birthday cake. I would be getting a carrot cake, something super dense, like as little flour as you can and still be considered a cake. And like as much cream cheese frosting as possible. And they had like this 2-layer cheesecake, a carrot cake cheesecake. And then there was something else. I think it was a French cheesecake cookie. Oh my gosh. So I was totally hook, line, and sinker, obviously out of my mind, exhausted from the busy week, and just made a stupid decision. So that went down the drain very quickly. So you can see on this day, I was like, you know what? In efforts for me to continue with this diet, I need something that's going to satisfy my mind. So obviously I've been putting a lot of emphasis and pressure on my foods to make sure that they're voluminous, they're high in dietary fiber, they're micronutrient rich, and they're going to allow me to, be successful at this fat loss goal. But then there's the other side where we also need to somehow find a bit of balance in our ability to also have the things that are tasty. And I guess this past week, I just hadn't given myself, the pleasurable foods that prevented me to keep going on, and sticking to my target. So that day, oh my gosh, I was grossly surprised at how calorically dense these new Crumbl cookies are. So I've always been a big fan of giant cookies, any kind, the stuffed kind, the giant kind, giant donuts, anything fun and just like huge. Obviously my eyes are always bigger than their belly. So I was assuming that each cookie would come in somewhere around 700 calories. So I was like, all right, I can fit that if I just have mostly protein, and salad ingredients for the rest of the day. And when I went onto their website after the fact, that was my mistake number one. If I could give you a little lesson, look at the macros before you put something in your mouth, even if you're going to have it anyway. Just take a look, because it might make you make a second decision, or at least pause for a moment. So I go over to Crumbl Cookie and I'm looking at their site, and my mouth just fell to the floor, and I'm like, what have I done? Oh no, I'm 3 weeks out, dang it. So I think this one cookie, it might have had 150 grams of carbohydrate in one cookie, and then the fats were like 55. Protein could have been 10 or something like that in this one cookie. So I only ate a quarter of this one cookie, and I'm like, cool, all right, I can probably taste a quarter of all 4 since I got the box of 4. And then I go over and have a look at the carrot cake and one of the other cookies. I can't remember what it was now. Obviously, I was not taking any of this in. I was just enjoying the delicious flavor. And it was like 11 or 1,200 calories for this thing. So in 4 tiny quarter little pieces, and as delicious as they were, I racked up like 1,000 calories, like before I even got out of bed, essentially. I think it was like Sunday morning. I was about to get up and do some cleaning, go get a workout in, So disappointed in myself, because look at what that little silly mistake did to my average calories. So, I mean, my targets, again, let's go back over and have a look at what my calorie goals are. 1,283. 125 protein, 108 carb, 39 fat. Here's little old Holly, 220 grams of carbs, almost 70 grams of fat. I'm like, gosh. So that was a lesson learned. I need to pay a little bit more attention now that I am so close out and I am so lean and my hunger is through the roof. My leptin's low, my ghrelin's high. Everything is like focused on food. So I just need to pay a little bit more attention to my nutrition this week to make sure that I have enough balance from my breakfast through to my dinner. And I hadn't been doing that. I was just on autopilot, eating the same boring thing, meal after meal after meal. And, eventually if you do that for too long, you end up just breaking and having, we'll call this the snacksident moment. So anyway, I've moved on. I've forgiven myself, but I did have to do some thinking about what my upcoming plan is going to be like this week. But we will come to that. What else? I also had a much better week of training again. So I'm trying to look at the bright side here. I had a pretty good week overall. So I got my 4 resistance training sessions done. Now, in the workout platform, I've actually consolidated my training into 4 days, but the way that it's written in the BeFit, my workout app, it's actually a 6-day program, and it just makes each day a little bit more like realistic so that you're not in there for like 90 minutes. But it is a big program. And again, part of that is because it is my program. I've got to do the work. I've got to burn the calories, and I would much rather expend energy doing resistance training as opposed to doing hours and hours of cardio and putting myself into a potentially catabolic state, where I'm not doing exercise that's supporting, the maintenance of my muscle anymore. So if I'm going to spend any more time exercising at this point, it would make sense for me, given how close we are, to kind of reinvest that into a little bit more gym time, a bit of, cardio as well. But I'm definitely doing a little bit more resistance-based training. So my caloric expenditure, I did track, that came out just under 2,000 calories for the week. And I will encourage you, if you're somebody that also tracks your data like I do, don't compare it to me, because we have very different bodies. If you're a small person or you're a tall person or you've got a lot of muscle or you don't have a lot of muscle, all of our energy expenditures are going to be a little bit different. So I wouldn't say, sitting here looking at my data today that you should be striving for this, or this is what Holly does. Just remember that we're all, slightly different. We're put together differently. We burn different amounts of calories. Some of my clients, I'm always in shock. I'm like, oh my gosh, you burned 3,000 calories doing your lifting this week. And there's also going to be some measurement error differences as well. Remember, I use an Apple Watch to track all of my data. I have some clients that are using different devices. They might have a Garmin. They might be using a Fitbit. And they all tend to have like slightly different measurement errors. And some of them are skewed extremely high, based on what I would observe, using my Apple Watch. So again, this isn't necessarily true, but the reason that I'm tracking these metrics is because I like to look at week to week comparisons. So I'm looking at relative change from one week to the next. And you can see last week I did 1933. This week I did 1918. So that's an insignificant difference in my energy expenditure. So at least I know that despite how crappy and tired I feel, I've still been able to expend a similar amount of energy, even if this number is not necessarily accurate. Coming across, I did my very first run for the entire prep. I cannot believe it. Guys, this is the weirdest prep that I've ever done. I can see that there are some benefits for doing it this way, and I can also see some downsides as well. So I have done no cardio. Normally I plan 60-minute walks, most days wherever I could. And I've also always done, like without question of a doubt, at least 2 or 3 HIIT cardio sessions for around 30 minutes through various means. I have not had the ability to do that because my schedule has been so busy. I've got lots of personal things going on. We've got lots of new products and app development. There's always lots of stuff. As a business owner, I think you guys that are in business and you have your own companies, y'all feel me. It's just a lot. So I've had to give up like my 60-minute walks every day. Sometimes I'll get 2,000 steps. I think you can see here, this is not an unusual day, 3,000 steps on a Monday, because I have so much office work. I'm just basically chained me to the computer. So I was so excited. I went out for a run with Sam. Must have been Thursday evening together. It was perfect temperature, like coming down in the high 60s after a long day. And it felt really good. But oh my God, I was a little sore the next day. But I'm very happy to be able to get a run in. I did make more of a concerted effort this week to get some walking done. Previously, if we scroll back just a few weeks, you can see here there were weeks where there was no way I was doing any walking. 2,000, 6,000, 2,000. Didn't track at all, apparently, that day. So definitely big efforts being made this past week to get some more movement in. And some of those trips, I will take my dog. Others, I'm like, she's too slow. She's a dash hound. She walks 23-minute miles. So for anybody else that is used to walking and your mile pace, oh my gosh, having this dog, I feel really bad for her because I want to get her outside and take her for a walk because she's so excited to go outside with you. Like anytime. I even indicate to be putting on a shoe or something. She has the best hype game. Like she convinces me to take her anywhere. But I'm like, Ray, you are too slow. I can't get enough walking it. So anyway, some of these are with her and they're not very far. They're probably the ones with the lower calories, like this leisurely stroll here for 30 minutes. But my average steps came in at 8,815, and my overall weekly energy expenditure is up, which I'm very happy about from last week. Last week was 32, this week was 4,000. So making much more concerted effort, knowing that I am so close to this first show. And again, I'm still a little bit nervous as to whether I'm going to do it. I don't want to show up and be sloppy, on stage when you know that you could potentially be leaner. We'll see. I still haven't registered, but my goal is to see what I can do this week. Like, again, this is where it comes in handy to have so many competitions to choose from. If I don't think I'm ready, I'll just pick another one because ultimately I want to come up, show my best, and feel really good about the condition and the package that I'm bringing in for this show. So that was my week. I had quite a fun weekend on Saturday. I went and filmed a full day of eating for you guys. So you kind of get to see a bit of a life in the day of a IFBB pro on the weekends, which was a stressful day. I was so exhausted at the end of the video. I was like, yeah, we're probably going to go for a walk. And we might go and, grab a nice wine glass or something somewhere. And I'm pretty sure I just fell asleep in the bed. I was like, nope, it looks like I'm having a protein shake for dinner. And I will rest my body. So Sunday was fun. Other than starting my day with cookies, I actually had some friends come over with their kids and we got to enjoy a wonderful day by the pool, which was so nice. I rarely get to use the amenities here because I am just always doing other stuff that I love and haven't really enjoyed our pool, but we spent several hours and I am so sunburned. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I forgot. Like normally I've always been an olive skin person. Like I grew up in Australia, so like we were outdoors every minute of the day. And I guess since moving to the US, even though I'm in Florida and it's nice and sunny, I have not been outside nearly as much. So I have to keep reminding myself like, oh, you're an albino now, Holly. Like you can't go in the sun and like expect to not get burned if you haven't got like 50 plus sun cream on. Sorry. Yeah, my sunburn is so bad. I was possibly even worse here, but I've been like caking on the aloe vera for the last couple of days and it's just, I'm so warm. I'm so warm. But anyway, I digress. Sunday was a really fun afternoon. Got some meal prep done and did some new client plans too. So if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, of course, send me a message. I'd love to work with you. All right, so let's go and see what I'm going to do this week. Let's head over to my adjustments. So moving down to this week here that's highlighted in green. Does anyone else want to vomit when they see that number? I do, 1170. So this is going to be my numbers. This is the reality of being a competitor. Now, there are going to be some folks, again, if they are more active than I, that won't even, they probably cannot believe their eyeballs, like looking at these numbers. I know I've dieted many clients down over the years who have finished their prep at 1,800 calories, which is essentially where I started. But we also have to look at their unique circumstances. They are far more active. They do 20,000 steps just incidentally because they've got 3 kids and they run around and they're on their feet all day. They might also do or elect to do more cardio because they've got the time to do that. So it's really important not to compare yourself. I know right now, like I have a good amount of muscle mass. If I were to look at all of our equations, I know that my normal like predicted maintenance calories are kind of right around where they should be based on my lean body mass. It's just I'm very sedentary at the moment. So I mean, this is the only way or really the only tool that I have to create my deficit. So I'm going to be coming down to 1170, which means 100 grams on the dot for my carbohydrate and 30 grams for fat. That is basically on the cutoff for where, I wouldn't say my fats would go any lower. Otherwise, I would be compromising my health in many ways. So I want to make sure that I'm getting plenty of essential fatty acids coming in to prevent things like gallstones, to make sure that I have sufficient micronutrient bioavailability, particularly my my fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. I want to make sure that I can still absorb all of these by having a certain amount of fat in my diet, and also from a hormonal health perspective. And as y'all know, I shared with you my recent lab work, I think it was sometime early March, and my testosterone levels were already like tanked, and I had barely just started my prep at that point. So I know like my levels are already like on the down. So to make sure that I'm not making this any worse, I really want to make sure that I don't have to drop my fats too low. So that's about the cutoff for me. Fiber, we'll keep that the same, but again, in efforts to make sure I am compliant with the most important thing at the moment, which is my calories and my protein, I'm giving myself a little bit of grace there. As I mentioned earlier, I believe my fiber intake this week was only 19, which is quite low. But up until, last week, it had been pretty consistently in the mid-20s. But I just needed a little breather. I needed to have something to get me through so that I could keep going. So I'm glad I did. I mean, it's in the past. I might have made a slightly different decision on the cookie brand had I actually known the caloric density of those things. I can't believe how high they are these days. They never used to be that crazy. Makes sense why they taste so damn good. But anyhow, this week my resistance training calories, I don't know why that's copied down like that, needs to be somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000 again, or at least I'm hopeful that that will be the case. I need to up my steps. So I know previously it was somewhere between 8 and 10. I only just scraped in last week with 8. I have to walk more. So that means I'm having to basically say no to certain things in my life. And it's basically, I'm letting go of some of my work obligations at the moment. I'm just not doing as much like developing and creating. I've also not been doing quite as much social media content. At least the last 2 weeks, I've really started to pull back on how much time I'm spending doing Q&As and just things that are not urgent and essential. So that extra 1 hour that I might usually do a Q&A for you guys on my story, like I'm instead going and actually getting that work done. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with my steps for this week. And that means, and I'll show you what I'm planning. And I've also got to get my energy expenditure up to 5,000. So I did some math. I calculated what I need to make sure that I meet my new target, which if I come over here, so this is my new goal. Now that I'm only 3 weeks out, I need to get a wriggle on. I got to pull my finger out, get some more fat loss. Otherwise I'm not going to be lean enough. So I'm operating at 0.9% of my body weight per week, which is almost 1%. There's a mathematic equation that I use. I use this for all my coaching clients as well, to calculate what deficit I need. And I basically needed, I think it was a 440 calorie deficit to achieve this. So I couldn't do that all through my nutrition, obviously. To take 440 calories away from my targets of 1283, simply not going to happen. It's too low. So I made a compromise and brought my numbers down here, but I have increased my daily energy expenditure by quite a bit. So how am I going to do that? Well, let's pop over and have a look. Where are we? Here's my forecast for this week. This is what I kind of mapped out very loosely to bring me in at 5,000 calories of estimated energy expenditure. So I added in 3 runs this week. It's going to be quite a step up. Obviously not changing anything to my resistance training. I'm just keeping, all of that volume pretty much the same, just over 4 days. But I'm going to be doing 60 minutes of walking. It has to be my priority, or, this competition isn't going to go ahead. So in those sessions, I'm anticipating around 320 calories of energy expenditure. And I suspect that I'll probably have to come in somewhere between 10 and 12,000 steps in order to do that on a daily basis. So that is my plan. If we were to sum all of these things up, if we pop down and have a look at next week, I've already kind of, again, loosely put those things in, and I'll make adjustments if I need to. But you can see that'll bring me in at 47. That's next week's forecast. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing for the next, several days. I wanted to talk really quickly about, not doing cardio for my prep. And I think I did briefly mention this in my training video to you guys as well. But I have noticed a big difference in my cardiovascular fitness. One of the ways that I could potentially have gotten around having such low cardiovascular fitness would be to shorten my rest times when I'm training, especially considering I typically train with low load training. With those shortened rest times, obviously your heart rate remains very elevated. Just last night, I remember sitting down between sets, looked at my watch, and my heart rate was at 171, and I hadn't moved that quickly through a workout in a long time. So that type of training, whilst it's still very effective at helping with muscle growth, because I'm getting my heart rate up and I'm really pushing, it's kind of like HIIT training, high intensity interval training. That would be one way to keep or maintain my cardiovascular fitness, especially, they're full 60 to 90 minute sessions. So that would be a great way to keep fit. I haven't been doing that. So that could have been one way I could have mitigate the decreased cardiovascular fitness. Of course, or I would maintain my normal running and walking and all those things. But like I said, it hasn't been an option. So the benefits I have observed in doing this prep the way that I have with no additional cardio other than just my incidental movement is that I have to assume that I am nowhere near as inflamed. So because I'm not doing so much high exercise or such a high volume of movement, I definitely haven't felt as sore and stiff as I used to. Conversely, previous preps where I've been doing all that extra cardio, I definitely feel the effects of all of that volume. And I'd say it's probably contributed to a pretty significant increase in my weight on the scale. So if we look back just to my last year's prep in 2024, my average weight was sitting in at, I think I came in my competition at 130. And, as I was prepping down, I was probably sitting at 138, 137, 136. That was my range. So 130 to 140 was kind of where I would prep between. It was top to bottom. Nowadays, it's been 136 down to 126 if I'm lucky. So it's kind of taken a big drop down, and I am of the belief, and I probably just need to pull up my DEXA scan from 2024 to 2025, or the bioelectrical impedance, I apologize, the BIA, which looks at your total body water. I bet you that I have substantially less total body water because I'm not as inflamed from doing so much work. So I think that's another reason why my numbers have come down. And again, just to support that, I would also refer to my B-mode muscle measurements, B-mode ultrasound muscle measurements that we recently did. that didn't really show a whole lot of drop or a decrease. It was not significant if we were to kind of compare, other studies where there's detraining involved. It was a pretty small decrease despite my trying. So, I was trying to work out, well, why am I coming in so much lighter? And I truly believe it's just that shift in total body water. The downside, I think, of not doing as much cardio is, number one, it's meant I've had to go pretty aggressive on the calories, which nobody likes to eat less, especially if you're a foodie like me. And then the other thing is, not only am I having to keep my calories a lot lower, I don't know that I'm getting in the same kind of active recovery. So there's probably a nice balance between resistance training and some light activity like walking or bike riding or a really easy jog that actually helps you recover. And what I mean by that is increased blood flow, increased nutrient delivery to your working muscles, and also, in the same token, increased excretion of those metabolic byproducts that accumulate when you're training out of that tissue. So I think it's probably one of the reasons why I haven't been able to heal my hamstring as quickly as I might have expected, because all I do is sit, outside of my lifting. So it's not something that I want to continue doing. Right now, I'm completely aware that this is circumstantial. Again, I won't belabor my last couple of years of life. It's been pretty insane. But, I do have the best intentions of making some adjustments to that so that I can be a little bit more active, not just for the aesthetics and the bodybuilding stuff, but also from a health perspective. Like, I care just as much about, my long-term health and my longevity, being able to lift and being strong and being fit, and eating well and, getting good sleep and reducing my stress as the next person. So I don't like my current circumstances, but I also know that they're not going to be this way forever. So that was just a quick little observation that I had. It's obviously a very different experience for me. I've never, relied on dietary means alone, basically, second to my resistance training to prep for a show. So there's that. But I want to pop over to my last week's YouTube video because I did see a couple of questions. A lot of people were commenting on my What I Eat in a Day meal prep video, and that they have adopted my water bottle spray for their pets because they were like, this was so annoying, I need to get one. So for $2 on Amazon, guys, get yourself a little water bottle so that your cats don't end up eating your food, or worse, you end up eating your cat hair because they hang out on your counters. It is frustrating. As much as I love my animals, and I'm very lenient in what they can and cannot do, but food stuff, it's like the bane of my existence. I'm constantly like, is that a cat hair? Yeah. Dang it. But anyway, let's go down. Okay. Totally different topic. But I'd be curious to see, this is a makeup one. I'll scroll past that. Not super interesting. Sorry, I read the wrong one. Do you always not eat prior to lifting? I'm a little bit confused by this rule. I've been drinking a protein shake 30 minutes prior. I would love your thoughts. And how much of that gelato do you eat? You just scooped it out, so I'm not too sure. Also, thank you for your video. You're looking amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So I think when it comes to pre-workout nutrition, it kind of comes down to what your goals are. Are they performance-based? Are they hypertrophy-based? And also the type of training that you're doing too. So some people might be doing endurance-based exercise. They're going out for a run. They're training for a half marathon. They've got, some kind of swimming event coming up, an open water swim or something. Maybe they play basketball or tennis. Everybody has different goals, and depending on what the outcomes of interest are, that might very well change whether or not I suggest, making sure that you're pre-fueled, you need to have this amount, and also, carry something with you to make sure that you can fuel during the workout, or not. But generally speaking, I think for anything that is 60 minutes or less, when done, just modest intensities, I don't know that you necessarily need to have, a huge meal before your training. Ultimately, you'd be relying on your stored muscle glycogen and your body fat to a certain extent, especially if it's a lower intensity, to help fuel that training. The intensity at which you are performing that exercise will also make a big difference. So there might be some instances where, if you were doing a HIIT spin class, I would be having something beforehand, just to make sure that I don't feel lightheaded and, I've got a bit of extra oomph in my tank because I've got some immediately available carbohydrate coming in addition to my stored carbohydrate, because it's possible if you were going really hard for 60 minutes that you would probably deplete your muscle glycogen. I have no doubt about that. So you definitely want to consider, having some carbohydrate prior to make sure that you've got, something coming in immediately available as well as stored glycogen. But generally speaking, for like a 60-minute resistance training session, I don't know that there is, a strong recommendation that you absolutely have to fuel before or not. What is important, if hypertrophy, muscle growth, is the outcome of interest, that you're getting a sufficient amount of protein, within a 3-hour window, whether that's a little bit before or a little bit after. The research seems to indicate that that's actually less important. And just making sure that you're getting not only a bolus dose of protein around that time, specifically the amino acid leucine, and then that you're hitting your total daily protein intake. That seems to be, by and large, the most important thing that you need to focus on. If you feel lightheaded while you're training, I know sometimes I do, I'll stand up from an exercise where I've kind of been, horizontal, or, my head is below my heart. Like glute hyperextensions are one, donkey kicks are another one. Anything where you're kind of standing, going from seated to standing. I will often feel a little bit lightheaded. And sometimes that is worse if I am not drinking enough fluid. So I will often wake up and my first thing I do is go to the gym in the morning. So you can imagine you've been not, fasted from food and fluid for several hours. There's also a very strong possibility that you're dehydrated and you're going into a workout. So, having low blood pressure is an account of not having had enough fluid in your system. That can also make those sessions worse. So I would say when you get up, make sure that you have like a couple of, big glasses of water. Usually like 16 ounces is kind of what I aim for before I even do anything. And then I also have my drinks, and there's usually 2 of them in my bag. I'll have a sports drink and I just drink diet soda as well, to make sure that I can stay hydrated within that workout. So it really comes down to personal performance, how you're feeling. If you really care about a time trial result or you're doing something that's performance based, then yes, have some carbohydrate. I would recommend, somewhere between 30 to 50 grams might be a good amount, just generally speaking for some, for most females, if you're going to do an hour of moderate to high intensity exercise. But I have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and I really don't enjoy having anything in my stomach when I'm training because it's actually a distraction. I end up not performing that well and I feel I'm in a bit of discomfort and pain. So that is my personal preference there. Last one. What have we got down here? Okay. On days you are eating less fiber than usual, would you recommend supplementing with a fiber product like Metamucil or something similar, assuming you're not specifically trying to reduce fiber due to show or photo shoot? Yeah. So what a great question. I tend to look at my weekly averages. So, my goal is obviously to stay within the recommended fiber targets, and that's around 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So again, depending on what your individual calorie targets are, there is a recommended number or gram amount of fiber that you can follow. But there's also this component that we have to consider that we can't pretend like it doesn't exist, and that's overall satisfaction and enjoyment of your diet. So, I might have 1 or 2 days where my fiber is a little bit low. If 5 days of the week I'm eating 25 to 30 grams, that's wonderful. If I look at my average, it still doesn't necessarily make much of a difference to my weekly average. And that's good for me. I'm happy with that because I know that that's going to help prevent, various chronic disease risk. Now, your suggestion here, I'm guessing you're mentioning this because you're concerned with maybe hunger. It's absolutely a consideration if you're not having the same volume as foods, even if you get that pleasure hit from eating something that's highly palatable, or in my case on the weekend, I also had a glass of wine at one of my dinners when I went out. So I sacrificed, 30 grams or close to 30 grams of carbohydrate, which could have been fiber, to a glass of wine, a big one. I think I had a 9-ounce pour. I probably am going to set myself up for a little bit more hunger. But there is also finding that balance of like physiological satisfaction in the stomach and psychological satisfaction too. So again, that's why I only do it maybe once or twice a week. And generally speaking, I try to have as much, fiber on my fun days as I possibly can. But yeah, I mean, you could certainly add a Metamucil or something like that. So Metamucil usually contains psyllium husk, which is a soluble fiber, and that can definitely help. But I think maybe where that would become more important would be people with like various gastrointestinal issues. So if someone had like a slow bowel and they found that they were constantly constipated, dropping your fiber might worsen that symptom and make things really unpleasant and uncomfortable. So, that makes it a little bit more tricky to do those, days where you have less fiber, because it really upsets your gastrointestinal transit speed. So in that situation, yeah, I think doing a Metamucil supplement would be more than appropriate. Any other questions here? Amazing how you're able to eat these yummy little things with so little calories. Yeah, that last meal prep plan was fun. That's how I usually eat. This particular weekend's video prep where I went out and had poke bowls and what was the other thing? Oh, I made a chicken satay at home, and then I had like an ounce of whiskey. We were doing like flights. Well, he was doing flights. I was tasting. And then what else did we do? Oh, I had a beer at lunch too, which was unfortunately a very calorically dense beer. But I wanted to try it. It was really fun. We stopped in at a special brewery, the Hidden Springs here in Tampa, to try these new ones. But that was not normally a typical day. But I want to show you guys that, because yes, I have those days where I'm eating more like my previous full day of eating. It's a weekday, but I also have weekends and other days where it's a little bit different. And I think I only had 2 meals and a snack on my full day of eating this past week. So I guess it just kind of shows you that you've got to have some balance. And even as a pro, even as a dietitian, who's a competitor, you kind of have to make sacrifices in efforts to reach your goal sometimes. So yeah, I fully acknowledge that there are potential like risks nutritionally when it comes to competing because of the low calories, and it means that you have to pay more attention to your day-to-day foods in efforts to make sure that you're not becoming micronutrient deficient. So I think that is probably all from me for this week. I've got to say I'm not excited about these numbers, and I've got to say I don't know how I'm going to fit all this stuff in, but I've just got to make it a priority. If someone asked me to do a task this week, I'm probably going to say nope, not until next week, or I'll be avoiding like making new features and doing anything outrageous in terms of app development, which is obviously extremely time consuming. So yeah, wish me luck, guys. I will say when this video goes out, there are going to be just a couple of days remaining before you guys can sign up to our upcoming challenge. So we have our spring into summer challenge coming up. I'll pop some details up here on the screen for you to have a look at. So it starts Monday, the 14th of April. So this is a 6-week program. All of the programs and challenges that I do now are shorter duration. I think it's just less intimidating for people. You can kind of hop in, hop out and do the next one. They're not as scary and like time consuming. But you get some really great inclusions. So not only will you have full app access, so you'll get access to all of my workouts, we also have exclusive challenge platforms and programs as well. So you'll get to do like my exclusive program that I'm going to be doing over the next 6 weeks, leading into my next lot of shows. Not only that, you'll have an exclusive community in the app. So instead of the community groups, usually being like Facebook groups and things like that, it's all in the app. So you don't have to deviate to different places. You can see a nice running stream of comments, people supporting one another, chatting amongst themselves, and I go in and I respond to those comments. And then we also do a weekly live Q&A session. So every Thursday we have it live. We also play it and post it back to the group. And I answer all of your questions. So it's kind of like getting one-on-one coaching. We check in each week basically, and I help you make sure that you accomplish your goals. So that's kind of the gist of how the challenges work. We've obviously also got an educational guide and then my audio that kind of goes with that. So it teaches you how to do the things that I do. So when I talked about the mathematical equations earlier, like all of that's in here. So in that educational guide, in our challenges, it teaches you how I make adjustments. And I mentioned earlier, I'm somebody that truly believes in the saying, you teach a man to fish for a day, he'll eat for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he'll be able to eat for a year. So I'm all about, helping teach and educate you guys so that you don't need a coach and that you can make these kinds of adjustments, on your own. So that's going to be starting on Monday. We're taking people in for fat loss, for muscle building, and also just to maintain your body composition. I know so many of you desperately need to stop thinking about dieting and focus on building or maintaining. And I would love to have an opportunity to kind of help you with that. So all of the details are found in the links in the description. So go and check those out. Or if you want to just head over to our website, it is as simple as beafit.com. So you can register. It's $99. You'll get access to all of that. And of course, all of my recipes are included in the app as well. So you can find basically anything that I've ever had published in a book. You can find it in there too. So I cannot wait to get started with that challenge. That'll wrap us up, I think, into May sometime. So starting summer here in the US, which is always fun. So, that's all from me, guys. I hope you have a fantastic week ahead, and I will see you in my next check-in where I'm going to be showing you how I do my peak plan.